Right. Well, that's enough of this. This is getting a little out of hand here. Just a bit too techy for me. Let's see if we can get. Boy, it takes a long time for the signal to get through to YouTube. There it is. There we go. I don't know how to answer your question, PA, about testing materials. There are variations due to the hardness of the water and the density between salt and fresh that require the the reagents to be stronger or to be more skewed to one end or the other. With well, you mentioned pH, that's an obvious one, but I my guess is that nitrites are not going to measure. If you take a freshwater nitrite kit, I've never done this. It's a good question. Use a freshwater nitrite kit and test it against saltwater and see if there's a significant difference. I don't know. That's interesting stuff. Where is this? Nick Lambert, thank you so much for your $1.99 super sticker. We're starting off well. Nice job. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. My Fish Tank Aquatics. We got a crew in here. What do we got? 47, 48, 50 people in here already. Wow, that's impressive. I do want to do an update on the Florida Wildlife Commission. We've got a bit of information back, a result of their meeting on Thursday, I guess it was. Testing kits are expensive. They are. Strips are cheaper, but well, they are not accurate. They can give you a sense of direction, but they are not accurate. The strips nor the drops. The drops are better than the strips. And yes, they have a shelf life. Not so much because they're active. The reagents are not active. They just settle out. So you have to redissolve them. And the best way to do that, frankly, is with heat. Trying to do it by shaking, you need to shake for like 15 minutes to get all those crystalline materials thoroughly dissolved. Works better with heat. But if you overheat, then you ruin the reagents. So it's kind of a crapshoot either way. I've got boxes of testing supplies somewhere. I haven't looked at it in years. Every once in a while, I'll dig through it and try to find a pH test, but then I find it's easy enough to buy. It's just cheap. You can get a cheap reagent. I don't know if I got one. I was just looking in my supplies here the other day. I don't know what in the world I've got. But I found something interesting that I won't be able to find again, of course. But it was a bottle of reagent that I bought. Well, here's something. Litmus. You can buy litmus strips for real cheap online on like Amazon. Except I can't get it open. I think it's glued shut or something. I can see it's sealed. Oh well. Um, the reality the reality is that unless you're having a problem and need to figure out what the problem is, there's not a lot of point to um, chasing nitrites or ammonia or pH. There just isn't much point to it because all it does is make you do things that increase the increase the variations in the tank. In other words, if you've got a tank that's becoming gradually more acidic, it has inadequate buffers in it, and it becomes gradually more acidic. It's going to take you a long time to figure that out unless you're testing. Um, and you're probably what's going to happen is it'll reach a point where it will stop. It'll reach like 7.0 or 6.4 or something like that. And at that point, the buffers are going to balance it out and it'll just stay there. That's more commonly what happens. If it gets worse, then you'll start noticing problems with plants and problems with fish and so forth. But it really is uncommon. It's unusual for water to lose pH unless you're doing something to cause it. If, for example, you're using rainwater or topping off with RO water, something like that, then the buffers are going to tend to diminish and the pH will tend to drop. But if you're there's a good reason for topping off with tap water because it maintains the stability, particularly if you have plants in the tank, because the plants and the other microfauna and bacteria and whatnot are are taking up, assimilating a certain amount of that GH, that general hardness. So it's not going to get worse and worse and worse unless, and this is really what I wanted to get into today. A beer always tastes better with father fish. Sounds Irish to me. I don't know. Um, it's what I want to get into today. The whole notion of being able to or trying to maintain an aquarium that is based on pure water. The water the people who do water changes on a regular routine basis are trying to get to a pure water state where there's absolutely nothing in the water, where it is essentially a completely sterile environment. Now the difficulty with that is it cannot be maintained. The minute you start putting food in the tank, it's no longer a sterile tank. And so by feeding that tank, just putting food in for the fish, if you have if you have no substrate or a substrate that is not capable of assimilating waste, if you have no microorganic material in the form of microbiology, in the form of bacteria or micro or macroorganisms, and if you have no plants, which would include algae. If you have none of those three items, then there's nothing in that water that is capable of assimilating waste. And so the waste naturally builds up. And it builds up to a point where it becomes toxic. It is essentially, and I determined on this understanding just this week that those who are trying to maintain pure state tanks by doing regular water changes, what they're really doing is they are accommodating pollution. They're polluting their water up to a point and then bringing it back, pushing it back over, bringing it back, pushing it back over, bringing it back. So they're on this seesaw kind of um, maintenance system that is deliberately causing the water to become foul up to a point where it is no longer tolerable either to the fish or the fish keeper or both or whatever. And then they bring it back. And you keep doing that, it creates a kind of a seesaw, which, in my thinking, weakens the fish. It puts them in an environment that is moving constantly in the direction of becoming foul, becoming polluted, becoming laden with biological material. And then if you start adding into that chemistry, chemicals to do one or a number of kinds of things, to provide for medication, to provide for certain water conditions, to provide for something that might be considered balancing. Adding chemicals to the mix creates a biological and chemical soup that is precisely what we mean when we talk about pollution in the natural environment. Now, think about this a minute, and you realize that this whole notion that we have that has grown up over the last 25 years or so of doing substantial routine water changes and then throwing all sorts of chemicals in the water in order to be able to counteract or create certain environments is precisely what we sue manufacturers for when they dump those kinds of things in water systems. It's pollution, and it's pollution of the worst kind. And so you fight against that by taking water out and adding new water to it. Well, it's a losing proposition because number one, you're weakening the animals. It may be in micro measurements, but you are nonetheless weakening the animals because you're forcing them to live in a less and less and less desirable environment until you get off your rear end and decide to do a water change. Now, you may be perfectly faithful about that and consistent about that and do it every Saturday morning. And that's fine as far as it goes, but you're still doing the same thing. You're still creating a polluted environment that you're pulling back from. Polluted environment pulling back from. I don't think that is a healthy and responsible way of keeping fish. And I'll just put it that way. I really don't. I think it's irresponsible to keep fish in a system or in a methodology that requires you to inject yourself routinely into the system in such a way as to bring about a dramatic shift in the direction in which the tank is going in order to be able to maintain it. And the reality is, you're not maintaining anything. You're simply creating an environment that is inherently unstable. Any environment in which water has to be changed routinely is by definition an unstable environment. So, yeah, I've been going through this now for the last couple of months. I've lived with it for many, many years. I've listened to all sides of the argument. I am absolutely convinced that there is no justification for maintaining aquariums that have no effective ability to break down waste, that have no ability to assimilate that waste, and that are incapable of purifying the water naturally. And those would be those three conditions: a substrate that is deep enough and stable enough to be able to break down waste into its component parts so that it may be consumed by microalgae, microalgae, microbiotic life, and by plants. Without those three in the system, I believe it's impossible for that system to be stable. But with those three elements, it has a profound stability, a stability that exceeds any amount of routine water changes. Routine water changes are a way of overcoming instability. Maintaining these three elements in the system are another way of maintaining stability. And they're a natural way of maintaining stability. And as any of us who have been doing this for any amount of time can attest, it actually works. And it doesn't matter what the size of the fish is or the behavior of the fish is. It is a system that is fundamentally effective. So why not do it? Why not simply put 6 inches of sand in that big tank, 6 inches of sand in the 125 to 200 gallon tank, and let her rip? It's the waste is going to precipitate into that sand. It's going to break it down. It will stay down there. It'll work itself off in the form of gases that will be released into the air. Nitrogen, for example. And it will not require regular routine water changes as a way of keeping the tank from fouling. And it's just that straightforward. It's just that simple. Do you really want a tank that is on the verge of fouling on a regular basis? Or do you want a tank that is not going to foul unless something really disastrous occurs? All right, let's get into the conversation here a little bit. Daniken is here. Nice to see you, Kenny. Metalhead, Aquatic Mayhem, Silver Creek is here. Bold and Dangerous. Oh, let's see. Silver Creek is saying small budded live oak twigs, creek biotope, native plants and a flow from quarter distance from the left, outside the tank, swooping down the right. Whether he's talking about a system he just developed. I've been looking at pictures of it. Pretty nice. Julia is saying there's no such thing as pollution. If it sits long enough, it'll settle itself out. That's absolutely true, Julia. Absolutely. The difficulty is if you're continuing to inject pollutants into the system, then it simply becomes worse and worse and worse. And it reaches the point where where it cannot continue to maintain the biomass that is built up in the water column. You're absolutely right. If you take a bucket of water, throw something dead in it, let it sit there, it may foul the water in the first week. By the end of the month, it'll be crystal clear. But if you're throwing something in that bucket day after day after day, it will never be able to become clear. And that's the problem with big fish and big tanks that are fed big amounts of food on a regular daily basis. It never has a chance to stabilize. The water will naturally stabilize. But if you keep throwing pollutants into it, it simply can't. Pollutants are excess nutrients or chemicals that break down natural processes. And we do both. Our vaunted industrial complex recommends both. They recommend overfeeding and they recommend a chemical fix for whatever is going on, both of which are destructive of a natural balanced environment. Let's see. Silver Creek says some people just like being able to throw money at a hobby. It's like gambling. But I've noticed I'm for all ways so long as however you're doing it is maintained properly. That's fine as far as it goes. But what happens when you get sick? What happens when you cannot maintain that tank on a regular routine basis? You hire somebody to come in and do it? Are you really going to trust that? You let it go for a month, 2 months, 3 months. You can get away with that for a while. But unless you have a balanced aquarium, you're not going to get away with it for long. Let's see. Silver Creek says if water couldn't stabilize, it wouldn't be able to go through different chemical changes. Well, that's right. And that's the means by which it does stabilize. Caroline Bernardes. Caroline, let's give you a wrench here and see what you got to say. Well, I lost her. There she is. About to build my first tank this week. Collected some stones from the beach. Now I'm afraid to use because some people say it can. Well, if they're from a beach, they're not going to change the water quality. Anything you find at a beach has been beaten up to the point where there ain't nothing left that can dissolve, unless it's like oyster shells or clam shells or that sort of thing that are pure calcium that are going to break down. But stones from a beach are utterly inert. Probably the safest thing you can possibly put in a tank is beach stones or beach sand for that matter, because it's completely inert. It is washed out to the point where there ain't nothing left to wash out. Dave says, I think people are brainwashed. Dave, I think you're right. I think that's exactly right. And being brainwashed is the hardest thing to overcome because it's like a locked in belief that doesn't get challenged. I think one of the keys to success in this hobby is to challenge everything. to look at it brand new every day. Here's a good example. I finally did it. I went in, I should have videoed it. I didn't. I'm terrible about that. I dug out about 25% of the mud, took all the plants out, put some new sand in. Now, this is a local sand that's mined here locally. It's kind of a red sand. I rinsed it extensively, but when I put it in, you couldn't see one end to the other. I did this, I think, on Thursday, Sunday. Yeah, I think it was Thursday. It's not quite crystal clear, but it's getting there. It'll be clear by next week. It's a little slower than I thought it might be. I do have a sponge filter going in here, so it's going to clear up. But there's something I wanted to show you. I talk about detritus all the time, sifting down into the substrate. I don't know if you can really see this, but there's detritus that was stirred up when I cleaned the tank. I took out mud. I did not take any of the detritus out. I just left it in there and added sand. But look what it's doing. Look what it's doing. Look at the level of the sand and look what's happening to that detritus. It is sifting down into the sand. Now that's 2 days. In a week, most of this is going to be gone. It will have sifted down into the sand. So we'll be able to see it, and I'll show it to you next week. This is the benefit and the genius of sand. The problem with gravel is it goes down in it quickly enough, but then if there's any current at all, it washes right back up again. And in point of fact, it's in contact with the water column, so it's going to be breaking down. That's a rabbit snail moving along there. There, cool little animal. Here's another example. See what it's doing? It's actually down in a matter of 2 days. It's down in the substrate. The little bit that was there. Look at that. It's moving down into the substrate. And there's some pretty heavy stuff in there. I mean, look at that. That's pretty deep, but it's going to be gone. Now, that could not happen in the other tank because it was solid. And I had to take some out or I was going to lose another inch of visibility in the tank. So we'll just watch this and see. Here's a little guy who's helping to make it happen. He's sifting down into the sand, looking for the little worms or other microfauna, maybe little bits of algae. And in the process, he's sifting. There's another one. Look at that. Little quarries. They're sifting down into it and causing it to move in ever more deeply. There's a shrimp. I finally got some shrimp. Yeah, Christopher's saying the only thing we should throw in an aquarium are plants to benefit the small ecosystem. Here's something else. I just put, I don't know if you can see it. I put some leaf mulch in here just today. I've been out collecting. I got some hands full and put some in here. I will get more in because I want to get it built up and make sure I've got a new population of choppers, of grazers, and microscopic animals living in here, micro and macrofauna. Are fertilizer pollutants? Yes, they are. I would say they absolutely are. And the way you know that is if you put an excess amount in, it fouls the water. And if it's a chemical, it will further foul the water. It'll toxify it. So yeah, we say they burn plants. They do more than burn plants. They actually kill the biological system that's thriving in the tank. Silver Crate, good point. He said that's why he follows this method. So if there's a power outage, he can trust the tanks with no power, and that's right. This tank will work perfectly well. Right now, I've got a sponge filter going to try to get this cloudiness out, and it's doing pretty good. It'll take another few days, and it'll be crystal clear. Then I really won't need it anymore. I've got a heater in there, but we're finally into some warmer weather, so I probably will not. I'll probably turn that off for a while. I don't like cold water in a fish tank that have tropicals. I just don't like it. It's too. I know they do fine. I know it works perfectly well. I just find that I can maintain a better balance and a healthier tank if I keep that temperature at around 80 degrees year round. Let's see. Oh, this is good. Haraki music. Get you a wrench. Um, Haraki saying, I only have sand as my substrate, no dirt, because I have not long come across you. Will it be okay? However, I'm going to collect leaves, etc., from a stream or pond. Do the leaves. And actually, you do have dirt because the detritus that has been sifting down into that sand forms a dirt layer. It forms a soil that breaks down waste and that becomes richer and richer as it ages. So even with just a simple sand bed, you wind up with a soil base because of the activity of the organics that are precipitating into that sand. So even starting just with sand is fine. It needs to be an absolute minimum of 2 inches. Now it should be three or more. 2 inches is the level at which the bottom of that is going to be anaerobic and will be able to function as an anaerobic environment. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, Christopher is saying, I'm glad I'm giving you my 10-gallon time to grow a food web. I'm finding all types of life floating and swimming around. That is fun to do. And of course, the minute you introduce fish, they start putting pressure on that food web. So, that one of the complaints that people have about this kind of system is that it depends on having a limited number of fish. Well, in point of fact, it doesn't require it, but it does make it much nicer because it provides an opportunity for the fish to be able to behave in a way that's normal and natural. If you've got 100 fish in a 10-gallon tank, it's going to be pretty tough for those fish to act in a way that is at all natural. They're going to be bumping into each other all the time. So in a very large tank, you can have schools of fish. And by very large, I mean like a 55-gallon or better. You could do a school of like neons or tetras in a 29. You could certainly do it in a 40-gallon. I wouldn't try to do it in a 20. You can do a few, three or four or five, maybe six in a 20. Then they'll move around as a group. But frankly, if you want that kind of behavior, you need to get a bigger tank. This is not bad. This is the same footprint as a 55-gallon, It's just 6 inches shorter. So it'll accommodate things like betas better. I don't have any tetras in it at this point. I probably need to do that. I need to figure out what I want. And what I might do is embers or some of the newer tetras that are coming in. Um, I'm finding myself more interested in new species than old species. So I think as I try to figure out what I'm doing with these tanks, that's the direction I'm going to be going in. Uranium glass. Uranium glass. Don't know a thing about it. Let's see. Erie saying one of my Harlequins has a little white lump on the lower lip, hoping he just bashed himself because he's like a cruise missile. What you can do if you have an injury like that, keep an eye on it. If it starts showing any kind of infection, take it out and just dab a little antibacterial ointment on it. I usually have a tube here. I probably don't. Um, that'll take care of the bacteria and will effectively sterilize the wound. You can use peroxide, but I would not. Peroxide is it's an oxidant and it can be far too dangerous to use with a tiny animal like fish. Just a drop getting in their lungs can burn the lung and kill the fish. But a drop, just a tad, a touch of antibacterial ointment will clean up that bacteria. It'll wash off almost instantly, but it'll do the job and it'll sterilize that site. It's a simple, easy, effective way to do something without going out and spending $50 on some kind of wacky chemical that's going to kill 90% of what's in the tank in an effort to get rid of a little spot of bacteria. Deadly means great in Ireland. Deadly. That's deadly. That's deadly. I thought that was the name, actually. Oh, well. Yeah. Let's see. Oh. Father Fish have only recently started and finished my Father Fish tank. Thank you for all the help and info. You're very welcome. Dash Drones. Hello, Dash Drones. We got some wrenches going here. Let's see. How many people we got in here? 97. Well, let me give you an update on the meeting last Thursday of the Florida Wildlife Commission. There were a lot of reptile people and some fish people there, notably uh, fish people from the industry. And they made it clear what the size of the industry was. And the commissioners were caught off guard. They had no idea that there were 20,000 plus animals in the tropical fish trade in Florida. That completely set them back. And they found themselves saying, well, we don't want to shut down the industry, and we had no idea that the population of animals was that large. We need to go back and reevaluate this. Well, they certainly do need to reevaluate it, and they need to reevaluate it in the context of what's been going on for the last 25 years and the efforts that the industry has made and continues to make in cooperation with the FWC agents to protect the environment from invasive species. It has been extraordinarily effective. Extraordinarily. There are no new invasive species in the state of Florida and have not been for about 25 years. It just hasn't happened. The fact that an animal gets loose does not mean it's an invasive species. It not only has to get loose, it needs to find an environment in that niche where it can survive long term, and that's near about impossible. It then needs to find a mate. It needs to have in that environment adequate food for its fry. The fry need to be able to survive predation, disease, water conditions, pH, whatever else. I mean, it's really very, very difficult for an invasive species to actually be able to establish in an environment if it's released accidentally by ones and twos. The only time it's happened really effectively is when the state has come in and released tens of thousands of invasive species across a wide range of environment in order to be able to establish a so called controlled population, which of course never controls anything other than native species and becomes a scourge on the landscape. And that's really the bottom line. All of the substantially invasive species that exist in Florida today were put there by the state in order to control something else that was considered to be a problem. And now it's two problems because it not only did not take care of the problem it was put there to take care of, it created a new set of problems. Well, that hasn't been done either for a very, very long time. We have all learned our lessons here. And for this bunch of half wits who have no knowledge at all, which they proved of what they're dealing with, are providing no training whatsoever for their staff, are operating in a bubble, in an absolute intellectual and reality vacuum to assume that they somehow know how to manage an entire industry of animals is the height of hubris. It is what stupid is all about. Stupid is believing that you have perfect knowledge and understanding. That's the best definition I know of stupidity. Anybody who believes they've got a handle on reality is as ignorant as the day is long. Do I have any? Oh, I lost that. Something in my tanks. Scuds. Oh, I love scuds. And no, I don't think I do. I'm going to be adding some. I finally got a culture of them going. So I'm going to get them and put them in this tank and some of the others and get them going. They will survive in here because I don't have anything big enough to eat an adult scud. Um, the little ones will get eaten, but probably they'll be able to survive because there's quite a lot of cover. They can get down in places. Scuds tend to live underneath things. If you're in a creek or in a bay or whatever, pick up a piece of hardscape, a rock, a shell, something, flip it over and look. It'll have scuds on it almost invariably. They're living in they're They're living in the safest environment they can be in, where little or nothing can get to them. They hide all the time. If you see them swimming around, it's because the population has increased to the point where all the hiding places are used up, and there's not much in the way of predation going on. Yeah, Andrew saying my local pet shop has signs saying fertilizers are essential to feed plants. I would suggest that the sale of fertilizers, maybe and other chemicals, medicinals, supplements, and whatever are essential to the economic well-being of that store. Probably because they can't sell healthy fish, and probably have a very limited supply of fish. Stores that have a very wide supply of animal life have a very low supply of additives, chemicals, supplements, fertilizers, all of that stuff. It'll be there, but it'll be essentially off in a corner. And they won't sell much of it. They won't really promote it because they've learned how to take care of fish. And they know that all those chemicals don't take care of fish. They create a polluted environment. They do, in fact, create a polluted environment that the fish keeper is then forever trying to rescue his tank from. Trying to take all that foul water out, or water that's about to go foul, so it doesn't kill or injure the fish, and put new water in, and then watch it go foul, and so it has to be pulled out again. My God, how insane is that? How bizarre is that? It's no way to keep fish. It is aquatic roulette. It's fish roulette. It's like having a gun pointed at the tank with one bullet in the chamber, and you keep clicking it and clicking it and clicking it. And eventually you hit the bullet and it blows up the tank. It's roulette. And it's wholly unnecessary. Wholly and completely unnecessary, but it requires something. It requires a belief that nature, natural systems, natural processes not only exist, but they can exist in your aquarium, and they can function at a level that maintains the stability of the aquarium. That's absolutely requisite. And until you get to that point, you're not going to be able to trust that nature knows best, that you can have a stable, healthy environment without very much effort, and without particularly the kind of effort that requires you to flush the thing out and refill it on a routine basis. Just saying, will a salt dip help fish? Well, I don't know what you're referring to, Dave, because I've not been following the conversation. Uh, let's see. Predrag Jovic says, I don't see a way to pollute the water with feeding small amounts of food and just enjoying the natural tank. My fish are enjoying 4-month-old water. Um, Nitrate is 100, so it's good. 100 is okay. 100 is fine. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Nitrate is not a toxin. You don't have to get nitrates out of the water. In point of fact, it's impossible in any kind of open system for nitrates to peak beyond a given point because it will be such a vacuum for algae that a single spore in the air is going to land in that water and just go gangbusters and eat up the nitrates. Algae is a nitrate sink. If you got algae, you've got control of nitrates. And at a given level, at about 300, that becomes relatively significant. It doesn't become toxic until it reaches about 500, and then it's only toxic to a limited number of fish. I know there are people who swear that that's not true, but the research is in, and the fact remains, it is that research was conducted by synthetically injecting nitrates into water beyond 300 because it was impossible to maintain to to maintain a nitrate level beyond 300. It had to be done synthetically. And only when it reached about 500 did it begin to have a negative effect on some fish, not all fish, on some. It simply, in any typical tank, is not a problem and not anything you need to be concerned about. It's one more test you absolutely don't need to run. And to be chasing nitrates and freaked out when they hit 25, my word, it demonstrates the level of insanity that has been injected into this hobby as a way of being able to make a buck. And by God, it's irresponsible. It's wholly irresponsible. And I just think it's important to come out against the hucksters that are trying to promote that kind of garbage as a way of trying to make a buck. It's unethical. It's a lie. It's deceitful. It is a con. It's wholly irresponsible. Don't fall for it. We are beset by con artists. And if you think I'm one, check my bank account. You'll find otherwise. And pre-drag, you're absolutely right. Maintaining a balanced tank is the simplest thing in the world to do. You don't overfeed your fish because they don't need it. They're finding food. In fact, if you stop feeding them altogether and you've got any kind of food web in there, they will be able to support themselves indefinitely. That's the nature of a food web, that it feeds every single mouth in the system. Every single one. I'm fighting the battle of flies here. F flies. I don't like them when they land on me because I have hairs on my arms and they tickle or something. Oh, I had a weird one. I got to tell you this because I don't know what it was. A couple of nights ago, it was, I don't know, early in the morning, 5 o'clock maybe. I felt something moving under my shoulder. I was laying on the side. It was like pushing in the bed, something kind of smooth, pushing to get under my shoulder. And I, half asleep, grabbed it and flipped it, and it flipped out of my hand. And it was probably a beetle, near as I can figure. It must have been a beetle. It was marble size, probably about that big. Don't know if it was wet. Do you know we cannot tell the difference between wet and cold? we don't have the sensory ability to detect wetness. We can detect temperature, but we cannot detect wetness. I didn't know that until fairly recently. And I've had my hand in water my whole life, but I was detecting temperature. Anyway, I felt like it might have been wet. It was slippery. It kind of slipped out of my hands. So that would be a sign, I guess. Of maybe it being, I don't know. But it was weird. And I got to looking for it and couldn't find it. Wondered, oh my God, what the world? Maybe it's something that was going to flip over and crawl into my skin. I mean, it was pretty freaky. I don't know. Scuds. I love scuds. Let's see where we're going here. Let's keep moving down. Erie makes aquatic compost ice cubes and slips them. You know, I have never done that. I've talked about it. I know people who have done it. I have one person on Discord who makes sheets of supplement and frozen and slips them slips them into the substrate. My experience has been that after about 6 months, it's wholly unnecessary because the natural biological activity that's going on is creating that soil base. Lucas is talking about the massacre that was done on Holy Thursday. Yeah, and what it demonstrates. Those of you who don't know about it, you can check on it. I think it's called Holy Thursday Massacre. Some FWC agents slaughtered some animals that were not on a list, that were private pets, that were, in fact, one of them was an extremely valuable boa that was worth easily $1 million. If you look at its economic value, its offspring were valued at like $5,000 each, and had just begun to bear to lay eggs or bear young. Or I don't know enough about bettas. Bettas, yeah, boas. The boas lay eggs. I guess they lay eggs. Anyway, they slaughtered these animals, none of which needed to be slaughtered. I mean, the whole thing was done just in the grossest manner. And of course, after the FWC is accepting no blame or responsibility. I hope to God they get sued. I really do hope they get sued to the tune of at least the value of the animals they've slaughtered. I miss EJ, Mary, and the old crew, says Craig. I know. I know. I do too. I did talk to Mary, talked to her this week. She's got a new hobby. She is collecting artifacts, native artifacts, and it's got as well as semi precious, um, being a semi precious rock hound, and she's made a friend in the area who has been doing this for some years and has a substantial collection of artifacts. Um, I'm going to be getting some of them. I sent them some support for their efforts, and they're supposed to send me some stuff. So I'll be happy to show that off when I get it. I've always been fascinated with points and hammers. I remember as a kid, I had a hammer, an artifact hammer that I just I don't know whatever happened to it. I kept it until I went to college, and I think it disappeared in the process of moving dorm to dorm or something. Probably somebody enjoyed it more than they thought I did. I don't know. But yeah, I miss them all too. Uranium glass. Yeah, I don't. I need to look this up. Okay, let me. They're all talking about uranium glass here, wanting to do a tank of uranium glass. I think they make bottles with it, don't they? Let's see if we can get an image. Oh my God! Yes. Okay, I know what that is. Let me see if I can show it. Video extra camera slides. Share screen. La, 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 la. There it is, right there. Look at that. Look at that. That's amazing. Gorgeous stuff. Wow. Radioactive glassware, they're calling it. Good for more lands. Pretty stuff. Yeah, that would be pretty, wouldn't it? Put a glowfish in it. Glass that fluoresces bright green under ultraviolet light. It's not recognizable in the light of day, so you need to have a little fluorescent fixture with you. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Shrimp and aquatics. Hello, hello. Andrew's gone to bed. Good night, Andrew. Um, Yosh Kelly, get you a wrench. Yosh. So anyway, the long and the short of it is with FWC, they've decided to go back to the drawing board, which is not necessarily a good sign. You know, they still may come up with something utterly disastrous, but at least they've been slowed down for a day or so. Day by day or day as day? What is this? Day by day. Better to get for the fish to get used to your water than to constantly try and buffer it. Yeah, absolutely. Water should have a natural buffer in it that maintains it at a given stable pH, which is a good reason for topping off with regular tap water because it's going to help maintain that stable buffer. Charles Fondren, hello, hello. Barb Bear, is florist plant supplement okay to use? I would never use a liquid. Just start with that. I would never use a liquid fertilizer in a fish tank because all it really does is load up the water with excess nutrients. And if you're putting it in there on anything like a routine basis, like more than once every 6 months, then it just is going to build up and it will become toxic. So, no, don't use liquid. If you must use Osmocote or plant tabs or something like that you can push down into the soil. Dead fish are the best thing, but that's what the Indians did when they grew corn. Push a dead fish down into the ground. Provides all kind of nutrients. And if you don't have dead fish, you can go to the supermarket and buy some and cut it up in little pieces and stick it down in your tank. So don't tell me you don't have any dead fish. Virus and thread protection. What? Nick Pedigo almost did that once. What is he talking about? It was when you did a water change, you only get a big. You didn't add the chlorinator. Um, so the chlorinator, if your water contains um, chloramines, chlorine and ammonia, which is a manufactured substance, it's created at the waterworks. And it's done for the purpose of preventing the chlorine, which is a gas, at normal room temperature, it gases off, it evaporates. So chlorine in water will rise to the surface and evaporate very, very quickly, which makes it ideal for things like drinking water because it'll stay in the pipe, which is full of water, can't gas off. But the minute it's exposed to the air, it gases off, and you've then got pure water. Makes perfect sense. The chemical czars have determined that it is somehow or other better to add another toxin, chlorine being a very serious toxin. It's bleach. For those of you who don't know what chlorine is bleach. Another one is ammonia. Ammonia is worse than bleach. Take a whiff of both. They'll both knock you on your butt. But one is worse than the other. And if you combine the two, oh, this is Machiavellian genius. You combine ammonia and chlorine, and you know what you get? You get an indestructible toxin that kills and goes on killing and killing and killing. It's diabolical. And it is in some water supplies. Why is that? Who in the world knows why anyone with half a brain would consider even the possibility of taking two of the worst household toxins that are available to us, combining them in a form that makes them virtually indestructible, and then putting them in the water supply. Whew. It boggles the brain. So, yeah, if you have that going on, I almost recommend you don't even use the water. You can add, I sell packets, I don't think I have any here, of sodium thiosulfate crystals. It is the pure form of anti-chlor, all of the anti-chlor, that's sodium thiosulfate or sulfide or whatever they're using. It's all the same, does the same stuff. It precipitates chlorine. Doesn't do a thing to ammonia, but it precipitates out the chlorine, and it'll break the molecule between the chlorine and the ammonia, and then precipitate the chlorine out, leaving the ammonia. At that point, the ammonia is in a small enough volume that plants and other microalgae life that is in the tank will instantly assimilate it. They'll take it in, they'll break it down, they'll make a nitrate out of it, a nitrate out of that. and get it out of the water. So yeah, if you've got chloramines, use sodium thiosulfate. I do sell it at my website. By the way, while I'm at it, I have a package deal of plants. If you need plants, boy, have I got a deal for you. Stem plants. I've got other kinds as well. I have rooted plants, but I'm selling stem plants. That's what's in here now. Primarily stem plants. 16 different, 15 actually, but you get an extra one. I sell 15, I give you one extra. 15 different species of stem plants, bunches. Each bunch contains 5 plants. So if you're good at math like I am, that's 75 plus 5 for the extra free ones. That's 80 plants for $59.95 plus $15 shipping. This is one package in here. A few extras. I had a few other things, not much. Basically, this. I think it's one. Yeah, it's one. It's one package of stem plants, and I didn't separate them. I planted them a bunch in each place because they grow better that way. Plants will do better when they're growing alongside a same species plant. If you've got kabamba and you want to get a bunch of it going, it's probably not a good example because it'll grow in the water. But anything that roots, like bacopa, plant it in a bunch, plant it in a stand, a group. That way, as it is affecting the substrate chemistry, in order to be able to generate the nutrients that it needs. Aha, they do that. They do that. Plants do. They send out signals, and the bacteria then manufacture precisely the nutrient the plant needs for that stage of its development. If you have a group of plants doing that, they're going to be able to have a greater impact and be able to create more of the nutrient that they need. And so the group are going to grow better than one stem. Very often you'll see people plant stem, 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 and they die. It's because they don't have this, they don't have the power, the strength to be able to generate the nutrients they need in order to be able to thrive. Little known. Let's see. Oh, so plants. Yeah, that's a great deal. We need to put I need to put the website in here. It used to be father.fish. That no longer exists. Oh, that got shut down. I'm gonna post this. Let me get it here. You know what I'll do? Here, I'll show it to you. Ta-da, ta-da. I think I will. That ain't it. Where'd that come from? That's gone. That's weird. Present. View file. Video file. I don't know. Here, I'll just post the link. Do link. Do I need to remove any of my? Every time I start reading something, my thumb hits the scroll and I scroll and I lose it, and then I can't find it again. Yeah. This has gotten to the point where I'm No longer able to find anything. A spider in your room. Yeah, I don't. A cockroach could very well have been a cockroach. I haven't seen any, but that would make sense. That would make sense. That'd be about right, actually. Huh. Haven't found. I found one or two, like 6 months ago, that came up with me from Florida, but I haven't found any since then. And I've got some quiet places that they would be if I had them. Hmm. Well, I'm sorry, I'm totally messing up on the chat here. I've been more into my own story than yours, so I've not been really paying attention. Here we go. This is good. Provided Joker. When water evaporates from my dirted tank and I top it off with tap water, should I still use tap water conditioner with it? Or just add the tap water without the conditioner? Um, Somebody want to answer. You don't need the conditioner. The conditioner is simply adding stuff to the water that is not really helping anything at all. It's not, in fact, a conditioner. It's, in fact, a pollutant. It's, in fact, a chemical which is not doing anything that's any good. And day by day wants to use it. And Father Fish says, no, don't. You don't need it. It's not necessary. Water conditioner. What's in water conditioner? What's the purpose of water conditioner? Well, what do they talk about? They talk about creating slime coat. You know what creates slime coat? Anyone? Guesses, guesses? Salt. Salt creates slime coat. So, water conditioner contains salt. Now, it may also contain a few other things. It may contain some kind of dye, like merthiolate or mercurochrome, something like that. It says removes nitrates, ammonia, and nitrates. Well, that's not true because there is no chemical that removes nitrates, ammonia, or nitrates. So those are all biological systems that are created and changed biologically. This is a perfect example of being sold a bill of goods about an item that has absolutely no value whatsoever. And in point of fact, used excessively is a pollutant. It increases the general hardness, it adds toxic chemicals to the water. I don't know what to tell you guys. You need to challenge everything, especially the things you believe in the most, especially the stuff you're absolutely addicted to. What removes nitrate? Plants, algae. Plants and algae treat nitrate as a nutrient. They actually build their fibers on it, they are made of it. Somebody just got everything for $200. Could be a good deal, could be a ripple. We're going to say it's a good deal. Sight unseen. The Devon tree wants to know what removes nitrates. Let's give you a wrench. Oh, he bought a 90-gallon tank. Wow, nice, nice. That's a great tank. 90-gallon tank. That's like there are different configurations, but generally 4 foot by 2 foot by 18 inches. The 24-inch deep is a 125. That's probably my all-time favorite tank, 4 by 2 by 2. Preferably drilled. I like the sump with a tank that size because it dramatically increases the volume of water and gives you vastly more stability, a virtual permanent kind of stability. Binders and conditioners. Well, maybe, but what happens then to those bound chemicals? They go somewhere. They don't just evaporate. The chlorinator, you need the chlorinator if you have, let me give you a clue here. If you, we were just talking about this. If you have chloramines, it's vital to use a dechlorinator because you want to break that molecular bond. You want to get the chlorine removed from the ammonia so the chlorine can be precipitated out and the ammonia can be absorbed by plants. If you have free chlorine, that means simply chlorine. Call the water company and ask them. Free chlorine means that when that water comes out of the faucet, the gases that are in it, the chlorine gases, immediately rise to the top and gas off in a matter of minutes. Now, if when you're filling your tank with a hose, if you spray the water into the tank on the surface. Just you don't have to do it fast. You don't have to crank it up. Just a good solid spray. The chlorine will gas off before it even hits the water, so you won't get any. And beyond that, if you're only doing a 10% water change, and I recommend never doing more than a 10% water change. If you're only doing 10%, it doesn't matter because it's going to break down. It's not going to be there in a sufficient quantity, sufficient volume to be able to cause a problem. Chloramine, I don't believe, is another issue. Chloramine will kill if it's there in sufficient volume, but at 10%, not going to cause a problem. I would get rid of it anyway, and I would look at some alternative ways. You can run the water through a charcoal block, and that'll pull it out. Charcoal will pull chloramines out. So that's a good way to be able to do it. And it's not a bad idea. If you can do like an RO system with charcoal filters, you don't need to put the fiber filter in. Just use one or two charcoal filters and run the water through that. It's going to pull all the heavy chemicals out, all the heavy metals, including chloramine. So it's a good way to really be able to use badly damaged water in your tank in a way that's safe. What are, oh, Alex was talking about the chlorinator and he said conditioner. Well, there are conditioners that have the chlorinator in them. So, you know, you were not you were not off the beam. I was, if anything, because I really wasn't considering that in my comments. But nevertheless, I do not consider conditioner a positive. I consider it a pollutant. Granted, It has to be used routinely and heavily for it to become a problem, but it certainly can. And it's an expense. It's not cheap stuff. It's an expense that you can forego at no loss. I mean, water is water. You don't need to put stuff in the water. That's all you're doing. If you're putting conditioner in, you're putting stuff in the water that the water, frankly, doesn't need, that the fish, frankly, don't need, that nothing really needs. So it's not particularly helpful. If you want to do something, and I rarely recommend any kind of treatment for water, but the charcoal filter is a good way of being able to provide sweet water to your tank without taking the general hardness out, without taking the buffers out, and without reducing the quality of the water. In fact, it will increase the quality of other water, and it may even take out some toxic bacteria. Lumbee, hello Lumbee. Found virgin neorites. Oh, I love them. I love them. I had somebody bring me a bucket of neorites when I was in my shop in Florida, well over 1,000. Spread them out in all the tanks, sold those for years. I think I've still got a few from that batch. I need to get a bunch. I think neorites are a wonderful snail. Some people don't like the little tiny white dots. I don't find the little tiny white dots something I even see. My eyes are bad enough I don't notice them. But boy, do they clean a tank. They're really effective. Is there such a thing as too much leaf litter? There is such a thing as too much leaf litter at once. Like anything, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. If you're going to do leaf litter like leaf mulch, put it in small amounts at a time. You run the risk of putting too much in and fouling the tank. It can happen. I've done it. I've done it in my outdoor vats where I would go out and collect maybe a gallon or two of mulch, throw them in a vat, and it fouled. It just was way more than the system could handle. So small amounts and you're good to go. And no, there's no upper limit on that. I mean, you can fill the tank with it. The most effective tanks I've seen have got basically an inch of leaf mulch on the entire bottom of the tank. And boy, does it grow fish, babies, everything. I mean, it is a natural environment for breeding and growing any kind of fish. It's an absolutely ideal environment. It's a nursery. It is what a nursery is. It's loaded with food of just the right size for the adults as well as the babies. So and it provides protection for babies so they're not going to get gobbled up. They can hide down in that stuff until they're big enough to pop up and look around. Cat basher. What do you recommend for an influx of baby snails? In my planted 5-gallon betta and cherry shrimp tank, God bless you. I recommend that you stop overfeeding. Stop overfeeding. You're getting a population of snails that are preventing your tank from crashing from the excess nutrients you're putting in it. That's what's happening. Don't try to get rid of the snails. The snails are keeping everything alive because they're keeping the tank from crashing. Stop overfeeding. And you won't have the snail problem and you won't have the potential catastrophe. And we need to give Cat Basher. Oh, we did. We gave him a wrench already. H. Rugthar. Finally caught a live stream live. A stream live. Bravo. And we're going to give you a wrench for the honor of being here. Slauzers, hey Slauzers. Is there evidence that a natural, more Walstead method will make fish thrive and live longer than a basic ADA show planted thing? Well, that's exactly what we're doing. That's precisely what we're doing. We're augmenting. Now, I haven't looked at Walstead's new version of her book. I need to get a copy and I need to go through it to see what she has updated. I know one of the things that she said about it is that she paid some lip service to sand or gravel or whatever you want. It's basically what she said. But what I'm concerned about is whether she's dealt with the issue of the system running out of nutrients and of the water column being loaded with nutrients, both of which are problems that we've solved. Now, the leaf mulch is the third fix. And what that has done is provided a genuine food web for the entire system that links it all together, that pulls it all together in such a way as to be able to provide, get that fly, is to be able to provide for the kind of nutrient base that will keep the whole system flowing and churning and living and thriving. Biofilm is amazing. Slauzers, it absolutely is. If you have biofilm, you've got the essential ingredient for all kinds of microfauna. It is what they eat. I'll get it. Biofilm is bacteria. It's bacterial growth that is eaten by microfauna. Macrofauna, shrimp love it. Any kind of crab, little tiny fish, small fish eat it. It is the most natural, excuse me, it is the most natural food you can possibly have in the tank. I got a bubble. So don't panic. Don't panic if you see biofilm. It's a good thing. Like, don't panic if you see snails. It's a good thing. Do you put dead flies in the tanks? I've not been. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't have any fish big enough to eat them. I mean, they'll break down and, eat them. But I haven't been. I don't have a good fly eating fish. I need a good fly eating fish. I need something a little bigger. I don't have anything bigger than a betta. Oh, this pleco is about it. It's the biggest fish I got. I still have not settled on fish. It's been 9 months, longer, Lord, 10 months, and I haven't settled on fish. In fact, I figured out I've got another tank. I've got a 40 cube I'm going to set up in my bedroom. I have a bureau with nothing on it, and that 40 will fit on that perfectly. Rocker 666 is in Guatemala. Huzzah. Nice to see you from Guatemala. Got some nice fish in Guatemala. I'm hoping you got them in your tanks. Green sunfish. They are indeed. All of the sunfish. I'll tell you what. If you got a 55 or better, you need sunfish. They're easily the prettiest fish. Easily the most beautiful fish that exists in freshwater. They are gorgeous, stunning fish, and there's such a variety of them. Wonderful fish. Green sunfish, you bet. My Betta loves fruit gnats. I kill them and feed them to him. Oh, you bet. Absolutely. Somebody was going on with me about gnats in their tank, and I recommended they put hatchet fish in there because hatchet fish will go after gnats. There was some reason why they couldn't do it. If you get hatchet fish, make sure you put a lid on it because they love. Oh, I got one. They love to. You've got to put them in the tank somehow. How am I going to do this? Oh, right there. Smushed them. I'm not all that thrilled. I have pencil fish in here. Let's see the pencil fish. Do I show you? Well, I'm screwing things up here now. Ah, there they are. Yes. What time is it? 7:30. We're moving right along here, aren't we? Paradise fish, spawn of Satan. Ain't that the truth? That is an evil fish. You know, they say Satan was the most beautiful angel. Paradise fish. Some kind of paradise. Mean buggers. Stunningly beautiful fish. Don't hit the mic. Did I hit the mic? I don't think I did. Did I? Lateral lines. They're beautiful fish. Hairy puffers are the real demons. I don't know what a hairy puffer is. Hairy puffers. When you have the oh, here we go. Mr. Millie. Mr. Millie, by the way, is with us on Discord. If you've not been there, you need to get there. Discord is wonderful. It's been 2 years in the process. It's finally coming into its own. We've got some amazing monitors. We have highly skilled, talented people who really understand the father fish system, and that's all we're doing there. We're teaching that system, nothing else. So if you have general, questions about whatever that have nothing to do with the deep substrate, go elsewhere because you're not going to get any help there. But if you're concerned about a deep substrate and all that is involved in that, this is the place to be. All right. Slaughter says the freshwater larger puffer that digs under sand has a spiky beard and extremely aggressive. I don't think I know what it is. The live feedings of heavy puffers, hairy puffers. I gotta have to look this up. All right, hairy puffer it is. Oh, there's a beast. Oh, well, do you see this? Look at that bugger. Wow. He even looks mean. Can I change this? I don't know. Yeah, just have to do it again. There we go. Look at that. That is a mean looking dude. Now, I have never seen him. I'll bet you he's from Vietnam. There are like 40 different species of puffer in the Vietnam swamps that have never been collected. He is gorgeous. My word. What a beast. Yeah, it's got spines on it. Looks like, anyway. Wow. Very cool. How do I get rid of it? There we go. Nice. Yeah, I need to get me one of them. I don't know where I'd put it though. I don't have any tanks like that right now, and probably I need one. With one in any kind of fish room should have one monster, at least one. That would be a good one. I would enjoy that. One monster puffer. Cute. Well, I don't. I wouldn't call that cute. That's more like. Joseph talking about Discord friendly and helpful people. It absolutely is. It's just a wonderful place to be. And the monitors are amazing. I mean, they have boggled my brain. Um, one of them is ex-military information specialist, and I tell you, you don't want to tangle with one of those. Ooh, they can, they can spot, they can spot a fraudster a mile off. It's just amazing. Nick Lambert is saying, so far the meanest fish I own are black angelfish, freshwater. Well, I can understand what you're saying. Big angels are pretty aggressive. They are, after all, a cichlid. But boy, what a stunning fish. M&C loves paradise. Mr. Emili, when you add the resurrection jars, do you only pour in the water or the leaf culture also? And when you do the resurrection jars, are you supposed to add soil to the bottom of the jar? And the answer to the question, to all of those questions, is sure, why not? The, the point being, the resurrection jar is simply a way for you to get used to the fact that there's life in all of the gunk that's in the bottom of the body of water and the bottom of your fish tank. Once you've determined that and determined how you want to move it into your tank, there are no hard and fast rules. Do what seems best to you and learn how to do it your way. This is very much a custom kind of approach, and everybody's going to do these tanks at here. Yeah, let me just kind of settle this a minute. There seems to be a notion that there is only one way to do a father fish substrate or a deep substrate. There are, in point of fact, an infinite variety. There are certain basic rules that you must adhere to, or you don't have a deep substrate. One of the rules is to use or develop some kind of soil. You can either put it in at the beginning or you can allow it to develop over time. A second, and probably the most important of all, is the importance and the value of sand. I cannot stress enough that sand is the fundamental substrate, the fundamental material in virtually every body of water on Earth. There are admittedly some that have mud at the bottom, but if you go down deep enough, you're going to run into sand. Any moving water, sand. There may be gravel, under the gravel is sand. Sand is nothing more than boulders that have been worn down to the point where there ain't much left. And that is the foundation of all water systems, fresh and salt. Look at the beach. What is it? It is sand. Any creek or stream, sand. Riverbeds, sand. Sand is the fundamental component that is inert, doesn't get washed away, lasts a long, long, long time, and allows waste to precipitate into it, thereby purging the water column above it. So in a tank, the sand keeps the water clean and clear. Everything that is a precipitant that is not lighter than or the same weight as the water precipitates down and goes, as I showed you earlier, into the sand. So, what have I got to say about the fatherfish system? What is it? It is a deep sand bed. That's all it is. It's a deep sand bed. You can put dirt under it, and I do. I even have supplements for it to be able to make it a rich environment so you can kickstart that. It's like having a Corvette or having a bicycle. You can get the Corvette going, zip it off, and be able to grow plants and get a really strong aquarium going pretty quickly. Or you can take a long time to get there. The end result is the same. You get there. This tank's 20 years old, 22 years old. For the first time in 22 years, I took some dirt out, added a little new sand, completely replanted it. I think it's going to be nice. Right now it looks kind of hodgepodgey. But once the plants begin growing again, I think it'll be a pretty tank. Let's see. Midori. Midori saying, it's interesting. When the pH is above 8.2, the shrimp just sort of hang around and don't do anything. I know with crustacea, what do I get right here? If the water is too hard, they have a hard time shedding because they harden up too quick. The new skin gets too hard in the middle of the process. If they take too long to come out, then they can harden up and it'll kill them. They won't be able to get out of the old shell. Most crabs, for example, go into fresh water. Saltwater crabs will go into fresh water to grow, to molt, and then when they spawn, they will pair up, but go down to salt water in order for the eggs to be able to hatch. And those zygotes, when they hatch, immediately begin swimming up toward fresh water. And it takes them a couple of months to get far enough up so that by the time they are no longer free swimming but have dropped to the bottom, they're in brackish water, light brackish, not heavy brackish. Erie saying legend has it some shrimp can live in battery acid. The Caridina prefer a more acidic environment. I don't know about acid. That would not be true, would it? But certainly 6-0. I have an extra bag left over fluval stratum. Should I just do all stratum or stratum with sand? Stratum with sand. Any of the material, synthetic aquarium material, cap it with sand. And there are a couple of reasons for doing that. Much of it has some nutrients in it, which will leach out into the water if you leave it exposed. It also over time is going to tend to melt. It's going to tend to dissolve. In other words, so by capping it with sand, you're keeping that muck down in there rather than simply on the surface. Depends on what the nature of this stuff is. But again, it's always the best idea is to cap with 2 inches of sand, whatever substrate you've got. 2 inches of sand on anything. 3 inches if you have nothing. 3 inches gives you an inch of anaerobic material to work with. Oh, Nick Lambert, 4.99 super sticker. Thank you, Nick, very much. Let me see if I can find it here. That's at 7:50. Where am I? An hour later. There it is. Nick Lambert, 4.99 super sticker. Thank you, Nick, very, very much. Every little bit makes a difference. It does help. Slows are saying CO2 may help a little. God, I'm glad you brought this up. But overdo it, it's not a fix, just an add on. CO2, if you have a deep substrate, 3 inches or more, you have a CO2 factory. That's what that does. It creates vast volumes of carbon dioxide, which gas off, but more importantly, are available then to the roots of plants. So if you've got a deep substrate, last thing in this world you need is synthetic CO2 going in there because you can't even begin to duplicate it. And the CO2 you're pumping into the water changes the pH, which you don't really want to do. And it puts the CO2 where it's needed, not needed the most. Where it's needed the most is at the roots. Yeah, here Slows are saying ADA is a buffering soil. So that's what you use that can cause pH problems. Yeah, absolutely, which is another good reason for capping it because you want to keep that buffer down in there. That prevents the substrate from becoming acidic, and that's really critical. My additives contain a substantial amount of buffers, a number of different kinds of buffers, in order to ensure that that substrate never becomes acidic. It's the last thing in this world you want to happen. Sean Graham, I'm 49 years old. First aquarium started with gravel, slowly capping with sand, six white skirts, black skirts. Just added stuff from a ditch. Uh, I would get that sand on there expeditiously. Don't be too slow about it. Half an inch twice a week for 2 weeks is not a bad schedule. Get her in there. Can you use crushed eggshell as a buffer? Yeah, absolutely. Um, you want to grind it into powder though. Grind it up really good in a porter in a mortar and pestle. In powder form, it'll work a lot better. Dooby doo. Sean Graham, did I? I did not. We're going to give you a wrench. Okie dokie. We're getting down to it here. I've got 757. Do I only do aquariums? Funny you should ask. I got to show you something. Oh, this will drive the girls wild. Come here, baby. Go. Look what we have. I actually have two. I have a pair. This is a female hedgehog. It's the pygmy variety, which is North African. And she's an older girl who's had a bunch of babies. And the male is very young. He's 5 or 6 months. He's old enough to breed. I've got them together. I don't think they've bred yet. But she's a busy little thing. Look at her. Yeah, they're really cute. Sweet little animals. I've had a lot of them. I had colonies of them at the shop, and I've just decided that's something I really nice. I really enjoy. They're really nice. So we'll hopefully try to get some babies. Get them going. All right. We're there. 8 o'clock. Nice to be with you guys. Endangered? I don't think so. There are different species. There's a European that's much larger that ranges all throughout Great Britain, Europe, and up into Russia, but it's much larger than this. They're certainly not endangered in captivity. They're a very popular animal, although hard to find. Not a lot of people do them, but they're pretty cool. Come in a lot of different colors. And if you get them as babies, they're pretty gentle. The male has not been handled. He's a little rougher. Oh, we're gonna poop, are we? I see. Okay, here we go. All right. I feed cat food. All right, guys, we're out of here. Bless you all. Nice to be with you. Bye for now.